Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're going to be diving deep into a skill that is absolutely crucial for mastering English. It's how to really listen and pick out the most important information from any conversation. And get this.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Our main source material is actually a podcast episode about listening skills.
Talk about meta, right?
Right.
It's like we're holding up a magnifying glass to the very act of listening.
Yeah, exactly.
And for those of you working on your English fluency, this deep dive is a gold mine.
I was thinking about that earlier. How much easier life would be if we could all just pinpoint that key information instantly. Like imagine in business meeting, you could just easily grab those action items and deadlines.
Exactly.
Or in a lecture, effortlessly absorbing the core concepts, even chatting with friends. Being a top-notch listener can make your connections so much deeper.
It's not just about catching the words themselves. It's about understanding the nuances, the intentions behind them, even the emotions woven into the conversation.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to do this, let's define key information. Our source material describes it as the essence of the message. Those core facts, crucial figures, strong opinions, or maybe even specific instructions. It's the stuff we absolutely need to grasp, to truly understand what's being communicated.
Yeah, and recognizing these elements, it's like building a house. You need a strong foundation and framework, right? That's your key information. Everything else in the conversation builds upon those core elements.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
They give a really useful example. Using a news report, they were saying the key information is the classic who, what, where, when, why. It's not about what the reporter's wearing, the background noise, or anything like that. It's about
the facts.
Getting those crucial facts.
And how do we sift through all the extra details and zero in on those crucial nuggets? Well,
that's what we're here to find out.
Our source material lays out some pretty fantastic strategies.
Okay.
And the first one is all about something we use every single day.
Yeah.
Context.
Contextual listening. This is where we start thinking like detectives, using our surroundings and the situation to filter out unnecessary information.
Oh, right.
It's amazing how much easier this makes.
You're like, putting on noise-canceling headphones for your brain. You tune out the distractions and focus on what truly matters. And our source material breaks down contextual listening into 3 key factors.
Okay, hit me with factor number 1.
Okay, the first factor is the setting. Imagine you're in a formal business meeting versus catching up with a friend at a coffee shop.
Totally different vibe.
The setting dramatically impacts the type of information you should pay attention to.
In a meeting, I'd be all ears for those decisions being made. Action items, deadlines. Those are the things that'll impact my work. But with a friend, I'm probably focusing on shared experiences, feelings, or just catching up on each other's lives. The key information shifts completely based on where you are and who you're with.
Right. And that brings us to factor number 2, the relationship between the speaker. If you're a student talking to a teacher, the dynamic is all about instruction, feedback, and guidance. You're listening for those key points. That will help you learn.
Makes sense.
But with a close friend, the focus shifts. You're listening for emotional support, shared experiences, maybe a bit of advice.
So it's a different
kind of listening entirely.
So the relationship adds another filter to our brains, helping us zero in on what's relevant in that particular interaction.
This is fascinating. What's the third factor we need to consider?
The third factor is all about the purpose of the conversation.
Okay.
Is it to inform, persuade, plan?
Okay.
Or just share? Each purpose has its own set of key information.
Okay.
Take a news report, for example. The goal is to inform, so we listen for facts and figures.
Right.
But imagine listening to a sales pitch. That's all about persuasion. So you're listening for those compelling arguments or amazing offers. Oh, I see. So by being mindful of the setting, the relationship, and the purpose of the conversation, we can truly become active listeners. We're not just hearing the words, we're filtering and prioritizing the information.
Yeah.
That's most important in that moment. It's like having a superpower.
Absolutely. Contextual listening is an incredibly powerful tool that helps us cut through all the noise.
Yeah.
And get to the heart of any message.
This is so cool. I feel like I'm already becoming a better listener just by thinking about it.
Me too. Context is definitely a game changer, but there's another powerful tool we can add to our listening arsenal: active listening.
Ooh, I like that.
This is where we go beyond simply hearing and truly engage with the speaker. It's about being present in the moment, responding thoughtfully, and really digging into the meaning behind what's being said.
This sounds way more engaging than just trying not to fall asleep during a lecture. So how do we actually put active listening into practice?
It's a dynamic process that requires effort, but it can be incredibly rewarding. The source material outlines some fantastic techniques we can use to become more active listeners, and it all starts with something we might not even realize we're doing. Nonverbal cues.
Nonverbal cues. You mean like body language and things like that?
Exactly. Think about it. Making eye contact, nodding along, even leaning in slightly. Those subtle actions signal to the speaker, hey, I'm here with you. I'm interested in what you're saying.
And on the flip side, I can see how avoiding eye contact, slouching, or constantly checking your phone sends the opposite message. It's like saying, I'm not really present. And frankly, I don't care what you're saying.
Exactly. But active listening goes beyond just body language. It also involves verbal cues, those little phrases that show we're paying attention and encourage the speaker to keep going.
You mean like saying things like, I see, or that's interesting, or even as simple, tell me more. I can definitely see how those little encouragements could make someone feel heard.
They absolutely do. Those cues show the speaker that you're not just passively listening, you're actively trying to understand their message. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Active listening also includes techniques, like paraphrasing and summarizing.
Ooh, tell me more about those.
Paraphrasing is basically taking what the speaker said and putting it into your own words. It's a fantastic way to confirm that you're on the same page.
Yeah.
And that you've understood the core message.
So it's like saying, okay, let me see if I've got this right. And then explaining it back to the speaker in your own words. I can see how that would not only show you're listening, but also give the speaker a chance to clarify anything that might have been misunderstood.
Exactly. And paraphrasing can be particularly helpful for those who are learning English as a second language.
A good point.
It allows you to double check your understanding of vocabulary and sentence structure in real time.
That's brilliant. I hadn't thought about it like that before.
And then we have summarizing, which is super helpful at the end of a conversation or when a key point is made. It's about distilling those main ideas down to their essence, almost like creating a mental roadmap of what was discussed.
So it's like taking all those facts, ideas and emotions, and condensing them into a clear, concise takeaway. That sounds really useful for remembering what was said, especially in longer or more complex conversations.
It is, and active listening doesn't stop there. The source material also emphasizes the importance of asking open-ended questions.
Okay.
These are questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no. They encourage the speaker to expand on their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, providing you with much richer information.
Instead of asking, are you stressed? Which would probably just get you a yes or no answer. You could ask, what about the situation is causing you stress? That opens the door for the speaker to share much more about what's going on and really allows you to understand their perspective.
Precisely. And asking open-ended questions not only deepens your understanding, it also shows the speaker that you're genuinely interested in hearing their perspective, which strengthens the connection and fosters a more meaningful conversation.
So we've covered nonverbal cues,
Cues.
verbal cues, paraphrasing, summarizing,
Yeah.
and open-ended questions. It's like we're building an active listening toolkit. But how does all this tie back to our original goal of identifying key information?
That's the beauty of it. When you're actively engaged, you're more likely to notice those subtle nuances and clues that signal important information is coming your way. You're basically training yourself to become a key information detective.
It's like having a spotlight shining on those crucial details, making them stand out from the rest of the conversation. Active listening helps us sift through the noise and focus our attention on what truly matters. So far, we've talked about using context to filter information and how active listening techniques can really help us engage with the speaker. It's like we're building up a whole set of skills to become expert listeners.
And that brings us to our third strategy for unlocking key information. Something that almost feels like we're learning to be secret agents. It's all about recognizing the verbal and nonverbal cues that speakers use to emphasize those crucial points.
Ooh, I love that analogy. It's like we're learning to crack a code, deciphering those hidden messages within a conversation. Tell me everything.
Well, the source material neatly divides these cues into two categories, verbal and nonverbal. Let's start with the verbal cues. Those signals embedded in the words themselves. Imagine you're listening to someone and they suddenly say, the most important thing to remember is, or here's a key takeaway. Those are classic signposting phrases.
Oh, yeah.
They act like bright flashing arrows, pointing directly to the information you need to remember.
It's like they're handing you a map and saying, here's the treasure, don't miss it.
Exactly. And then you have those emphasis words that speakers use to highlight key points. So words like critical, Vital, essential, or even just a simple important, these are all red flags waving in the air, telling you to pay close attention.
It's almost like they're using a verbal highlighter to mark up the most crucial parts of their message.
And don't forget about the power of repetition. When a speaker repeats a word or phrase multiple times, it's a clear sign that they want that point to really sink in.
Like they're saying, hey, this is important, so make sure you write this down.
Right. But it's not just about the words themselves, it's also about how those words are delivered. Pay close attention to pauses and intonation.
Okay.
A speaker might pause before or after a key point to let it sink in, or they might raise their voice for emphasis. They might even slow down their speech to ensure you catch every single word.
So even the way someone speaks can give us clues about what they truly value and what they want us to remember. It's like their voice becomes another instrument for conveying meaning.
Now let's move on to nonverbal cues, those unspoken signals that can often speak volumes.
Body language, facial expressions, gestures, these are all part of that unspoken language we use all the time, right?
Exactly. Let's start with facial expressions. A speaker's face is like a window into their emotions and intentions.
I like that.
A genuine smile can signal agreement or approval, while a furrowed brow might indicate confusion or even disagreement.
And it's not always about the big, obvious expressions either. Sometimes it's those tiny micro expressions, a fleeting look of disappointment, a quick flash of excitement that reveals so much about what the speaker is really feeling, even if their words are saying something different.
Precisely. Those micro expressions can be incredibly revealing, especially when you're trying to gauge someone's true feelings.
It's like those poker players who try to keep a straight face, but their little twitches and glances betray their true emotions.
Now let's not forget about gestures. A speaker might use hand movements to emphasize a point, illustrate a concept, or even express their level of confidence.
Right.
A sweeping gesture might indicate a bold statement, while a subtle hand movement might convey a more nuanced point.
It's like their hands are adding an extra layer of visual information to their words.
And finally, we have body posture. Someone who stands tall and makes eye contact might be projecting confidence and authority, while someone who slouches or avoids eye contact might be signaling uncertainty or even nervousness.
It's amazing how much information we convey without even saying a word.
So by tuning into these verbal and nonverbal cues, the signposting phrases, emphasis words, pauses, intonation changes, facial expressions, gestures, and body posture, we can become much more adept at deciphering the speaker's true message and identifying the key information that lies at its heart.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. It's like we've assembled a whole toolkit for becoming expert listeners. We've explored how to use context, active listening techniques, and those subtle verbal and nonverbal cues to truly understand what's being said and extract those crucial nuggets of information.
And what's so exciting is that these aren't just theories. These are practical tools you can start using right away in your everyday life, whether you're in a meeting, attending a lecture, or simply chatting with friends. These strategies can help you become more confident, engaged, and effective communicator.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage everyone listening to start practicing these techniques today. Be present, be engaged, be curious, and see what you discover. I bet you'll be amazed at how much richer and more meaningful your conversations become.
And remember, effective listening is a journey, not a destination. It's a skill you can continue to hone and refine throughout your life. The more you practice, the more natural and intuitive these techniques will become.
Absolutely. It's all about building that muscle memory for effective listening. So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art of listening. We hope you've learned some valuable insights that you can put into practice right away.
Keep those ears open, those minds engaged, and those hearts connected.
And thank you for listening to the Be Smart Podcast.